Good afternoon. I'm Matt Driskill, editor of Asian Aviation magazine and AsianAviation.com. Today we are speaking with one of my favorite people in the business aviation world, Gary Dolski. He is officially now the outgoing CEO at Metrojet in Hong Kong. Gary, welcome back, and thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you very much, Matt, and pleasure as always to speak to you. And just because it is that time of the year, I'd like to wish you and the family all the best for a good festive season and a really good, a happy and a healthy 2025. Okay.
Yeah, we actually put the tree up the other day, so my wife is very happy. Gary, it's been a long time since we last spoke, actually a couple of years, I guess, and now you're retiring on me. But tell us what's in store for you personally as you head off. I think before the show you had mentioned something about Italy, which is one of my favorite countries. So let's make everybody jealous first and tell us what your plans are, and then we can get into business aviation.
Fantastic. Well, again, thanks. Yeah. So after 44 years in aviation, 25 in business aviation, and 8 wonderful years with Metrojet. We bought a place in northern Italy in Piedmont district right before COVID, and Dan and I've been going back and forth, and finally after you hit a magical age and you say now's the time to retire, and so we're both very much looking forward to January going out to Italy, and I get to drive her crazy permanently for 24 hours a day. So very much looking forward to that, and it's been a wonderful career, and I think I'm one of the fortunate ones that can say I love coming into work every day, and I'm just looking forward to the next chapter.
How's your Italian?
My Italian is terrible. My wife's is great, and so that's my first job I have to do, because you need to be able to. I have to take an Italian driver's license, so I'm going to have to do the whole beginners and read the book and do the test. So unless she's going to drive me around for the rest of my life, I've got to learn the language.
It should be fun. It should be fun.
Yeah.
It's a great country.
Yeah.
You mentioned you'd been at Metrojet for 8 years, I guess. You joined in 2017, and you pretty quickly you rose to the CEO position.
Yeah.
Give us an idea. What was the company like when you joined, and what was the business aviation sector like in Hong Kong at that time? And then after that, we can get into. We've got some new leadership coming in. I think Dave Yip will be the new CEO.
Yes, he will.
So we can talk about that. But what was Metrojet like when you joined, and what was the sector like in Hong Kong?
Okay, so the great news is I'm working for a most wonderful gentleman by the name of Sir Michael Kaduri, who was the founder of the company. Metrojet had been around at that point in time. Let's see, we're at 27 years now, so it was about 20 years when I joined. So it was the longest operator in terms of maintenance and aircraft management. Hong Kong's always been the home base. If you go back to 17, it was the pre-demonstration period, also pre-COVID. No one had an idea what COVID was like, so I will have to tell you, business was good. China was booming, Hong Kong was booming. Asia was actually booming, so it was a wonderful time to come into the market. There was a lot of new aircraft coming in the region. Business is going well, and then as we all know, fast forward a couple of years, and I don't want to say all hell broke loose, but COVID hit Hong Kong and China particularly hard. So we had to do a whole bunch of adjustments through that. So the good news for us as a company, we've always had 3 legs to stand on in terms of aircraft management, a Hong Kong MRO base, as well as a Clark Philippines base. So we've always been able to, even if one side would wobble a bit, we've always been able to stand up on at least 2 of the 3 legs.
And in general, the sector, was Hong Kong the center of business aviation in sort of North Asia, or?
Yes.
What was it like?
Hong Kong was definitely the center. I would also say, and as everyone well knows, Singapore is a very, especially at Seletar, very prominent in the Southeast Asia region. But Hong Kong was always a nice little gateway into China and out of China. So it was very, very business centric. Business was booming very well. I think we all know what's happened since then. There's been quite a mass exodus of aircraft out of Hong Kong and the China region. But again, as Sir Michael has always said, which I love the saying, is the higher the ball drops from, the higher it bounces back. So we're just waiting for that bit of a bounce back now.
That's an optimistic way to view
Yeah.
things. And Mr. Yip, Dave Yip, is coming in to take
Yeah.
over for you. He's got some big shoes to fill.
No.
Will we see any big changes at Metrojet, or is it sort of more of the same, gradual expansion? What's on Dave's plate?
Okay, so I think what you'll see is more of a gradual expansion. Dave has been my COO for a couple of years now. He's got 25 years of business aviation experience. This is the second time round for him to come in with Metrojet. Technically incredibly astute, great MRO background, very strong in the aircraft management. What I think he's going to be very fortunate in, our management team is a very strong management team that I'd put up against anyone in the region. It's a very cohesive unit. So I think what we'll do is we'll take the same approach that Sir Michael has taken on business in all of his other ventures. It's slow and steady wins the race. We're here for the long term. You know, when we did our brand new hangar in Clark, for instance, a few years ago, it's a 50-year lease. So what you'll see is a very solid and steady approach to business. We're regional. We're going to stay regional because we never wanted to be the biggest, but we do try and strive to be the best. So safety, protect the family name. These are the two foundation points that we do in terms of the family. And you're going to see Dave just leading and going straight forward that way. He's got a couple really good ideas. He's got the support from our board and definitely all the support from our staff and our management. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing it doing even much better than even when I've been running this company. Then I'll know it's a success.
Now, I used to live in Hong Kong. Kadori is a famous name. Is he the Kadori that owns or at one time owned the Peninsula Hotel?
That's correct. The family very strong in Hong Kong, and the peninsula is under his family as well. Heli services. So you know the aviation bug has been around for about 35 years. That whole view of giving exemplary service, which also ties into the peninsula. The Taiping carpets that you see in many of the business aircraft is also owned by the family. So very strong roots in aviation.
Yeah, I love the Peninsula. It was a great hotel when I was there. The high tea was something to go to.
Yes, and it still is. It still is.
I took my parents there when they were visiting Hong Kong. I want to back up a little bit.
Sure.
You talked about China and Hong Kong a little bit, that we're seeing some movement out of the area.
Yes.
And I was wondering too, are we seeing people sort of downsizing? I mean, Asia in general, and I think China in particular at one point always favored the big cabin, the large cabin jets. But do you see the people that remain tied to business aviation that still have the jets? Are you seeing them sort of right sizing now and going, okay, we don't need a large cab. We're not flying 7,000 nautical miles. We're flying, in country to visit the factories. Are they sort of downsizing to medium and smaller size jets, or is it? What are you seeing in the market?
I'll call it, instead of a downsize, I'll call it a right sizing.
Right sizing.
Right sizing, and what we're actually seeing, and I think you nailed it very well. The market is now maturing, right? If you take a look at still 60%, 65% of the aircraft is still based in the U.S., very mature market. It's really, what do you need? There used to be the story, size matters, and it doesn't matter really what the need was, but I wanted to have a big ramp presence. That's I won't even say slowly fading away. That's fading away. It's really, what is the aircraft? What do I need? And that's really what I'm looking at. You're getting in a down market, and the economy in China has really struggled for the past few years and continues to struggle. But whenever there's a struggle on one side and things are going down, there's entrepreneurs and new businesses coming up. You're seeing younger owners get into the business, and you're looking at people looking at it more as a business tool. And as a business tool, it's really, what is the tool I need for my business? There will always be those high net worth individuals that it's more of a, it's this is what I want versus this is what I need, and that'll still be present in the market. But we are seeing in basically all across the Asia area is, this is the aircraft that I need. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be in terms of the size, but people will also now look at pre-owned that would have previously only looked at new aircraft. So it's actually a very nice mix now as the market matures, makes it easier for the aircraft management companies to talk to the clients and say, let us know, what are your city pairs? Let me know how many people go in. Is this for business? Is this for pleasure? And then you can tailor it according, and when you want to go the 7,000 miles or whatever you want to go and fly, then you know what? You really do need a crew rest area, right? So there's a logic coming into place now that I would suggest 5 years ago, 7 years ago, we didn't quite see the same view on what do we use the aircraft for. So there is more of a logical approach to the business.
A couple of things, and then we're going to have to take a quick break. You mentioned you're seeing younger people come into the market. Is that simply because younger people are we're seeing a younger demographic that are making a lot more money than I am these days? And also, are you seeing are people wanting to be owner operators, or what's the impact on the charter business? How's the charter business going?
Okay, so the charter business is going good. So again, if we take a look at how some of the economies have struggled in Asia, and again, unfortunately, I'll particularly pick on China on this, where there's basically been over the last 3 years close to a 60% reduction in aircraft. Anyone that was used to sitting in the back of the bus on these planes still likes to do it, and maybe their financial situation has changed such that they can no longer afford that aircraft. The charter business is definitely increased in the region. If you take a look at the mainstays, whether it's a Qatar Executive, VistaJet, etc., they're doing very good business now. There still is some struggling points in certain parts of Asia where illegal charter is quite prevalent. If I take a look at some of the numbers that people are actually charging for their charter, I do scratch my head saying you're not going to be covering your costs on that. But that being said, there is a growing market, some of it initially induced from COVID, with everyone wanting to be safe and enjoying that little bubble. So that has actually started it. You see the businesses now looking more for the asset, and let's dabble our toes into it first. And so maybe if I'm only going to fly 50 hours a year, I don't really need to spend 70 million, but I could afford $500,000 or $1 million to just do some charter times. And so there's a logic then going there saying, is this what I need? Can I move up to a fractional? Do I want to do a sharing with 3 or 4 of my friends? So again, I think there's a good logic coming into play into the Asia region now, where it's really what are my needs, and there will be a growing up into further acquisitions. And it's the old, do I try a pre-owned first? Do I go into this? As unfortunately or fortunately, some of the economies are looking more insular now. They only need to fly within their country. So do I need a plane that'll do 7,000 miles if really the most distance I'm going to go is 1,000, right? And so I can spend X amount versus X plus, plus, plus. So there is a logic coming in, and there's some wonderful aircraft out there, whether it be pre-owned or new. The OEMs are coming up with some wonderful new products that'll actually fit all of the little voids that were previously in existence.
We're going to talk about that in a minute after we take a quick break. Gary, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, which is Metrojet of Hong Kong. We'll be right back after this.
Great.
We're going to have the crown jewels of Asia, and I promise you we're going to have the nicest and busiest business aviation hangar in the region.
And we're back. We're talking with Gary Dolski, the soon-to-be retired CEO of Metrojet in Hong Kong. Gary, we were talking about China a little bit earlier, but let's sort of branch out from Hong Kong. You mentioned earlier Malaysia actually is
Mhm.
we're seeing a lot of action go to Malaysia. I think
Mhm.
Dassault actually moved their office there.
Yep.
There's a lot of MRO going on in Malaysia. You set up the Clark base in
Facility.
the
Yeah.
Philippines. Give us an idea. I mean, how was it setting up? How long did it? When did the ideas kind of germinate that said, okay, we want to go to the Philippines, and why didn't you choose Malaysia? What made the Philippines stand out? And then also you mentioned Singapore earlier with Seletar. We can talk about that in a little bit, but what made you say, okay, Philippines is the right place for us?
Okay. So in a previous life as well, I ran a reasonably large facility in Singapore years ago, and to this day, I will still say Salita is probably one of the best, if not the best, business aviation hub, specific for business aviation in the world. But if you also take a look at Singapore, it's very saturated now. It's very OEM driven. You just go just a tad little north, and you have a wonderful facility that the Falcon, the Execujet people have built. It's a great competition. It's out of Subang near KL, so you have a pretty saturated area sitting in that part of Asia. And for anyone to come in, what you're basically doing, you're taking a pie about this big, and you're just trying to carve away somebody else's piece. And what I've always tried to do is work with everyone, whether it be a partner, whether it be a competitor. And so we did a whole bunch of research when we were taking a look at where did we want to place a facility. And we took a look at the Philippines because we had been there. We've been there now for about 10 years. We had a smaller facility. You do your normal homework, you do your circle maps, how many planes are in the region, how far away are you from other locations, and it came up very well. It's a lower cost center. You can tap into the Hong Kong, into the China market. You can also tap into the Southeast Asia market. You're far enough away, and I won't want to call it to be a threat to Singapore or Malaysia, but where you can both work closer together, and it's worked out wonderful for us.
The typhoons don't scare you though.
No, because here's the other thing: in Philippines, where we're located, we're not out in on the coast. We're not in, say, Subic. We're not in Cebu. We're in the middle of the country. Our new hangar is earthquake resistant. Is I won't say monsoon proof, but was made to the highest standards that we could. So we're in a very nice little bowl area.
Yeah, I always feel bad for the Philippines. They get hit with every typhoon that comes through.
Yeah.
Let's go to Oceania, Australia, New Zealand. Australia's got people don't realize really how big Australia is. I mean, it is a huge country, and that's all right.
Okay, I think I'm good now.
But Australia's got a lot of private aviation, for the Murdochs and all those guys that have to fly from Perth to Cairns to Sydney to Melbourne and back and forth and everything. What's happening with business aviation in Australia, New Zealand, places like that?
Okay, so it's a growing area. So if you take a look how mainland China has shrunk, you do get India growing, and then you get Australia. Australia is one of the bigger regions that are growing. It's quite self-sufficient within the country itself, and a lot of the owners, especially on the new aircraft, still actually fly back to the OEMs. So they're flying back to the US, they're flying back to Canada. There is some good competition based out over there now. On behalf of Metrojet, we've looked at the region, and we're actually quite comfortable doing what we've expanded right now. So we have Hong Kong, which we're very fortunate does probably about 90% of the labor hours in Hong Kong. We have Clark up and coming. So really, until we see our facility being working to the maximum, we actually look at another area. And there is some good competition right now based in Execujet. So again, based in Australia, i.e. Execujet. So there's no real need for us to go ahead and take a look at that piece of a pie and try and take something away and try to bring down pricing and things like that.
Okay. Quick question. We're almost done. We're almost out of time. Everybody, all the big makers, the big OEMs, Boeing, Airbus, Embraer, everybody else, Pratt and Whitney, Rolls-Royce, they're talking about supply chain problems these days. Do you find that prevalent in business aviation at all?
Yeah, it still is prevalent. It has definitely gotten better in the last year or two, which is very good. And there is not one OEM that I would pick on versus the other that has a bigger problem or not. We're all been impacted on it. I would actually say that the trend is actually getting much better towards it. So as it's going now, I would say it's going at a reasonable pace, getting fixed. There still are some specific vendors that are running into problems. What I would though say is probably the biggest issue or the bigger issue we have is how is the world going to be looking at it, let's say, come January next year, and with certain potential tariffs coming on between different countries and that whole geopolitical situation, I think that could take the snowball effect very much and really shake it up a lot worse than what we currently have, because everyone is really quite intertwined now. Every country has something being built in the other country, and if somebody wants to say, I think we're going to do this, that's actually a much bigger concern than what we're currently facing right now, man.
Well, I was thinking about, I'm working on a story just on that particular subject on tariffs because, Pratt and Whitney sells a lot of stuff to China, as does Honeywell's got a big office in China. Comac, 90% of the plane is,
yes.
not 90% of the plane is Western parts.
Yeah.
The people, say what you will about the politicians, and we'll say that for a beer.
That's a beer conversation.
We'll say that for a bottle of Chianti when I come visit in Italy.
Absolutely.
But the tariffs, has the potential, as you said, to really snowball and affect a lot of people. How's Boeing going to sell jets to China?
Absolutely. And you also got to take a look at, there's even in this downturn, even say you look at China, companies like, say, Heiter in Tianjin with Paul de Grossier, they're still trying to expand. They're becoming a Gulfstream service center. They're trying to do things into Dashing. You look at other companies that are trying to invest and do things. If we actually get into this type of a trade, I'll call it a trade war, whatever you want to call it, it's a lose-lose. And win-wins make sense to me. A lose-lose, somebody loses less or more. There's a logic that I hope the adults in the room take a step back and actually take a look at that, and what there could be a lot more betterment than going the other way on this one, Matt. And so I'm looking forward to reading your article when you have this one on this one. It'll be a good one.
Yeah, I don't know how many adults are left in Washington, D.C. right now, but anyway, that's another story. Gary, last question. What is in store? Get the crystal ball out. What's in store for business aviation in Asia, say, over the next you mentioned tariffs, but say the next 6 months, the next year. Is there anything that really stands out to you that any big news or is it still incremental steps or sort of what can business aviation look forward to?
Okay, so I still think growth will be in some increments. I don't think, again, specific areas may be flat for another year, some may be for 2 years. There is some growth if you actually spend some time with the OEM salesmen, the brokers, the charter people. There is more optimism coming forward in this. The other big step I will tell you, and again, because it's Asia, even though there is some right sizing of aircraft needs, you take a look at the products that, Bombardier in the 7500. If you take a look at the 700, 800 from Gulfstream, the 10X is going to be a pretty amazing aircraft when that comes out. And so those are for really aircraft that are suited for the region. The ACJ 220, a wonderful plane as well that's going to be coming in. And so we're seeing a lot of the optimism from the salespeople. When that happens, the used market also picks up as well. So I've always been an optimistic guy. I won't even say I'm pessimistically optimistic, but I think the next year will be a bit slow and steady. But with charter operators going more, with newer assets coming available, I think things within what we can control. We don't control the geopolitical situation, but what we can control, I think it's a very positive outcome.
Great. Okay, I said that was the last question, but here's my last question.
Last question.
Is Kadoorie going to fly you on a private jet to Italy, or are you flying commercial?
You know what? We're going to do the commercial route this time round. We're going to do the commercial this time round, but you never know the second time round, all right?
Gary Dolski, the soon-to-be former CEO of Metrojet in Hong Kong, thanks for joining me in conversation.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Matt. As always, please take care, and we will do some Barolo in Italy.
All right, take care.
Thank you very much, sir.